Let's turn to the letter that you wrote to your delegation. You called President Trump dangerous. You added, quote, his sick mind and reckless conduct could consume the lives of millions. We should note, Senator, you're not a psychiatrist. You're not a psychologist. You have no medical standing to diagnose anyone.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
And are you concerned at all that by attacking the president's mental fitness, you might undermine criticisms you have of his policies and his actions?
Jake, no member, very few members of Congress are psychiatrists or physicians, and very few, even fewer members of the cabinet. Yet the Constitution empowers them to find a president unfit to carry out the duties and powers by virtue of physical or mental impairment. So setting up a standard that one must be a psychiatrist to come to some judgment about this mountain of empirical evidence that the president has a sick psyche is to set up a false standard. We as Americans are stewards of our children's, our families' safety and future, and we must, in my view, now come to some conclusions about the president's fitness.
I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just a TV doctor.
I never went to college.
Well, where do you get this from? Obviously, he sends a lot of tweets. Obviously, he's made a lot of comments that have offended people. But going from there to he has a sick psyche and should be removed from office, yes, that's quite a leap.
Well, indeed it is. And let me give you a vivid example of the president's delusional thinking. The other night, part of this nuclear crisis, he said that he has modernized America's nuclear forces. That simply is not true. It's patently false. No president can do that in 7 months. Furthermore, it takes appropriations by Congress to make physical changes in the nuclear arsenal, and those appropriations have not yet been forthcoming. So the president told an untruth. And what's really shocking is that he has no guilt or shame or apparently even awareness that he's engaging in lies, and he believes his own stories. This is delusional conduct.
Well, we have heard a lot of lies from a lot of...
He's not a well man.
We have heard a lot of lies from a lot of politicians. I will grant you that you hear more of them from this president than previous presidents in terms of the sheer number. But it's not as though lying, no offense to you as a former senator, it's not as though your virgin ears have never heard lies before. Yeah.
It's more than that. He's delusional. He doesn't grasp the fact that he's lying. He believes in his own lies. He cannot be persuaded otherwise, and he has no shame or guilt or regret or remorse. I mean, the man is delusional as well as paranoid, an extreme narcissist, as I think we would all agree at this point.
I want to talk now with Dr. Alan Francis, Professor Emeritus of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Duke University Medical College. Thank you very much, sir. I read the letter today. You were the chairman of the task force that wrote the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 4. Those are the guidelines for diagnosing mental illness, and you have some strong opinions pertaining to the president. In a letter to the editor to the New York Times, here's what you write. Part of what you write, you said, most amateur diagnosticians have mislabeled President Trump with the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. I wrote the criteria that define this disorder, and Mr. Trump doesn't meet them. He may be a world-class narcissist, but this doesn't make him mentally ill because he does not suffer from the distress and impairment required to diagnose a mental disorder. So what are the characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder, and explain why you think it is incorrect to apply them to the president as many are doing?
Well, these are people who are grandiose, self-absorbed, self-promoting. They lack empathy towards others. They'll exploit others. They need admiration. They like to feel very, very special. Now, you don't have to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist to recognize that many of these things may apply to President Trump. But that's not relevant to making a diagnosis of mental illness. You also have to experience distress and impairment. And Donald Trump causes distress. There's no reason to think he experiences clinically significant distress. And instead of being impaired by these characteristics, he's been rewarded with the highest position within our power to grant. He's now in charge of our country and the fate of the world. Mm-hmm. So certainly be aware of the fact that he has these features, but don't call him psychiatric names.
Yeah.
Psychiatric name calling won't help him, and it very much harms people who do have real mental illness.
He's not well. He really should be, Congress and the cabinet should be thinking in serious terms about whether he's fit to serve.
Have you talked to any members of the
dangerous,
you talked to any members of the cabinet? Have you talked to any of your former colleagues in the U.S. Senate about this issue?
I have, yes.
Any Republicans?
Not a great many. I live in New Hampshire. I'm not a denizen of Washington. I left there a long time ago. But I'm finding that behind the scenes, they're saying the man is crazy. In front of the scenes, they're not quite ready to do that. And that's why it's so important that we talk about the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, which authorizes the cabinet or the Congress, in the alternative, to appoint a body that either finds the president fit or unfit from a physical and or mental point of view to exercise his powers. Most Americans don't know that or not aware of that amendment. It's been part of the Constitution now for 50 years.
Doctor poses